Hello, hello. In today's lesson, we are going to look at different ways to write November. Now, it's simple to just give you a worksheet that has a list of ways for you to write November, but instead I want to show you how you can move step by step from one lettering style to the next and use that previous one as inspiration. So let's dive in, and we are going to do 17 ways to write November. Now, you might be tempted to start off with your brush marker, but it's probably easier when you're deciding how your letters are going to fit together to use a pencil. That allows you then to easily erase and not feel too committed to any of your designs. So first of all, you want to start by writing November as you would with brush lettering, just as a first draft. Of course, your first style might be different than mine, and that is absolutely okay. It's just about getting it down onto the page in the way that you would use it, and then following some of these steps for how you can easily change up your letters. So for instance, if this is our first go, why don't we try writing it very similar to this, but at an angle? Take all of those letters, you're going to use a similar style and just tip them all on their side. That gives you a totally different feeling. What if we take this and we give it some flourishes? Of course, when you do this, you can change up the style of some of your letters. This is just to give you a head start. You can try angles, you can try changing flourishes, you can try making it have a different sort of feeling with bigger loops and swirls. But all of these will help you to get more and more styles of lettering. Why don't we try taking the angled letters and adding a flourish to that? You might find that some of your letter styles work better than others, and this isn't about every single time turning out perfectly, but for you to be able to see things that you like. For instance, this one, while I like the idea of this flourish, it definitely goes too far because then it hits into this M flourish. So one of the beauties of using a pencil is that the other side is an eraser. You can always erase and try again, modifying those lines that you've drawn in to make sure that they all fit together. So we're keeping the angle, we're keeping the flourish, we're just making sure that each flourish has its own space to live. And flourish. Let's take this style now and we'll make it loopier. Also, when you're doing that, you can maybe try changing up some of the letters. A few of them could be capitals, or you could try taking away that first capital and adding lots of loops and swirls. Let's continue with adding even more flourishing, and we can kind of marry these two together because I like the top flourishes that are happening here, maybe even making some loopier flourishes. So we'll take that inspiration and we'll take the inspiration of having a little bit of an angle, and you can even try writing your letters on a curve. So sketch out a simple curve for yourself, and then you can start to write your letters along that curve. Your curve needs to be dramatic enough that you'll notice the movement rather than it looking like it's just sort of floating up into space. Now would be the time when you would pick your favorite designs and then go back with your brush pen and write those out with your brush pen. So we've already done 6 designs. Let's continue on, and instead of using the cursive or the script lettering, we can also use print. And you'll notice that I even sometimes mix my script with my print. You'll see that little O there because it's just what I do. So a lot of this is developing your own style, but you can use these same tricks to be able to take one type of your lettering or the first way you'd write it and push it a little bit further. For instance, we can also add some serifs. And now let's change the angle and maybe fatten it up a little bit. Give it more breathing room in between. But you'll see that we're always keeping something about the design and not throwing it out completely, just changing it step by step. And because I like to mix styles together so much and it gives you such a unique quality to your lettering, let's try mixing some of the serif with some script. And instead of just doing the serif with the script, we can also use a more basic print mixed with script. And remember that not every time you do it is going to be perfect. For instance, this E got very small. So you can always go back, erase, and change them, and then even decide which of these is your favorite. Which ones do you want to change up with a brush pen and write out, or just put to the side and save for inspiration for other words that you design later on. And there we go, just like that, we have 5 more designs. And maybe you don't want to do your final letters with a brush pen, you want to do them as a monoline. That means that there's no thicks and thins to it. Let's do a few designs, starting with a monoline. Of course, all of these can stay as monoline, but let's take this one, sort of its inspiration, mixed with this one with inspiration. I like the way that some of these are smaller and happen to go over top of other letters, and you can be inspired by yourself. Let's do a print that has some of that overlapping. So a tiny O with that V sitting on top. E can even be going underneath the M with the B on top, just like we had in that last one. With this, we're really holding these letters close together, squishing them together, but without them actually touching, we're using elements of the letter to overlap. Let's keep going with this. Remember, don't ever throw anything out. So one thing I like about this is the way that some of the letters are a little bit smaller. But if you just have the smaller, then you sort of have space around, and how can you fill that in? Well, one way to do it is to keep those ones tiny, and then afterwards you can go back and you can add in a little line or an embellishment underneath, like a fall leaf or something simple like that. And it helps to balance out the word a little bit better. So going from that idea of lines, what if we did this all just as a whole series of lines? Now, of course, as you're doing these sketches, you'll see things that you want to change a little bit, but don't expect your first drafts to be perfect. They definitely don't have to be. This is like a brainstorm page. You're just trying to get your ideas down there on the paper, and then afterwards you can go through and evaluate to see which ones you really like, which ones are not your favorite, and which ones you definitely are going to mark as a keeper. So here are some really easy monoline ideas, and again, you can see the progression. Let's try doing a monoline script. Let's try making it a little bit curvaceous and giving it space between those letters, because that gives you space to play with things afterwards. Like maybe we want to take this from being a monoline to adding weight that's not brush pen weight. So what I mean is changing it to a lettering style where we're adding weight to the bottom of the letters. And you can refer back to your letter above and then go in and add that weight. I like to think of it sort of as a bit of a dirty, well, I don't like to think of it as a dirty diaper because, I mean, dirty diapers are not the most fun thing to think of, but I kind of think of it as that heaviness. When you have a dirty diaper, it sags down like that, and everything up top is a little bit lighter. And remember that as you're adding these lines on, just like with everything else, it does not need to be exactly the way you're going to have it in the end. You are brainstorming. Feel free to make mistakes and feel free to play around with things. You can always go back and work your spacing and work your design afterwards, but get those letters down on the page. So again, we do our letter, and then we're going to add that weight on the bottom. And we have our R, and we'll add weight on the bottom. Now, if you don't have anywhere to go down, you can always fill in that upper portion. And then to see what your letters look like, give them a quick scribble, and then you can start to find areas that you would want to change. But of course, you don't do that in the draft phase, you do that afterward. But this one's good for now. Let's try, I liked the idea of drawing the outline. So what if we go back to a serif and we do an outline serif? That's really good for bullet journaling because then you have space to be able to fill it in with color or even just leave it white so that the rest of your page is very dramatic with its color. And I also like the idea of moving things up and down. I had mentioned potentially putting little leaves underneath because it's November. So maybe if we move some of our letters up and down here, that will give us space for some of those elements that are really nice for a bullet journal when you're doing your monthly design. And of course, being able to do your outline serifs, that is something that comes with practice. But that's why I'm making all of this as a free worksheet download for you so that you can use any one of these different designs for your monthly bullet journal or for your calendar or for any place that you might need to write the word November. You can find that just by clicking on that link down below, and that will give you your own copy of this worksheet. And now we have those spaces, we can draw in some leaves to really bring in the theme of November. In a very short amount of time, we have gone from our first initial quick way to write November, moved on to changing that up by changing the angle, changing the flourishes, changing the feeling of the letters, and then also looked at how we can use those same elements for print. Also by changing the style, changing the angle, changing the spacing, and then mixing and matching. These are all great ways for you to push your lettering a little bit further. And if you don't want to push yours, make sure that you download the worksheet so that you have all of these different ways to write November right at your own fingertips. Also, if you want inspiration for even more words, sign up for my Word of the Week. There's a link down below, and that gives you a new word worksheet every single week, allowing you to take one word and develop it with flourishes and even have a few other styles for how you can write it. Until next time, happy lettering.